Andrea Catalano, welcome to the Rocky Mountain Writer podcast.
Thank you, Mark. It's nice to be here. I've loved listening over the years.
Oh, thanks. Well,
Yeah.
you and I have bumped into each other quite a bit here and there, conferences over the
Yes.
years. I would say probably we've gone back 8 or 10 years, something like that, off and on.
Probably. I want to say I officially joined RMFW in about 20 years ago in 2005.
So maybe,
And
maybe even longer.
that may have been
Yeah,
the first conference I went to as well.
yeah. I could be longer in that case then. And we've chatted. I think I've taken your headshot at a couple of conferences or maybe at least one. And,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
we've
we
we've
did.
talked.
My
Yeah.
my first headshot was was
Yeah.
was taken by you. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah. And now, I mean, after years, I know you've been at it and working. We've got tremendous news
We
about
do.
about your first published novel coming out this September, and I could not be more thrilled for you than anybody. I'm just so happy for you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's pretty
Yeah.
exciting. Yes, patience is a virtue. One that I thought I lacked, but apparently I do have some patience. So,
Well, begin where you want to begin, but I'd love to hear the story. I mean, I know you've got some other finished novels that were not published. Have you been querying agents? Have you been sort of working at the traditional approach of finding an agent? And did you maybe you had some agents along the way, but no sale?
yes, I signed with my first agent back in 2008, and she was a great agent with a very reputable agency. Um, Unfortunately, she was shopping my historical fiction novel in 2008, which was a pretty bad time economically, and nobody really wanted to take a chance on a debut author in publishing. So it was really unfortunate timing. Um, I ended up staying with this agent for 8 years, and wrote another book while with her. Also became a mom within that 8 year time frame, which kind of complicates things and
Yeah,
slows down the creative process in some
sure.
ways. Not so in other ways, but different creative processes. So I stayed with this particular agency for 8 years. We got lots of glowing rejections. And then finally we got to a point where anything I would propose, or the next book that I wrote, she was not she had read the first 100 pages, really liked it, had said keep going with this book, so I finished it. And then when I handed in the finished product, um she said, I don't think I can shop this, which was really unfortunate after
Yeah,
spending all that time writing a book. Um,
yeah,
so I said, you know what? I don't think this is working. This partnership's not working. So and it was nothing personal. She was a lovely person. But so we just kind of parted ways amicably. And that was in 2016. And then I started working on another book. And had another child in that a couple of years later, and moved between Colorado and Texas a couple of times during this whole process for my husband's work. So a lot of moving parts. Finally finished the fourth book, and I went to the Historical Novel Society conference, and it was the 2023 conference in San Antonio. And this is a crazy story. I went to a cold read session. It was like an evening cold read session that the author Jamie Ford was hosting at the conference. And yeah, super nice guy. And it was an after hours cold read. So they wanted you to read something either like horror related, violent, or sexual. And I'm like, I got this. I got a great sex scene that I can read. And pardon me, here's my kitten. And then so I was like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to go in front of this room full of strangers, and I'm going to read this love scene out loud, because why the heck not? And so I did. And everybody was kind of like, woo, wow, that was hot. And then apparently the author, do you know Olivia Hawker, Libby Hawker?
Mm.
historical fiction novelist. She happened to be in the audience, and the next day, everybody was like, "Hey, Libby Hawker's looking for you. You read that sexy love scene last night. She's looking for you. She wants to talk to you." And I was like, "Oh, cool. I'm going to her session today." Pardon me. And so I finally met up with her in the afternoon, and she said, "Hey, I heard you read last night. It blew my mind." She was like super complimentary. And she said, "I'm going to introduce you to my editor tonight after the banquet." And I was like, "That's great, sweet." And I didn't really know who her editor, I didn't know who she was published by. So I asked around, and a friend told me, "Oh, hey, her editor is the editor-in-chief of Lake Union." It was Danielle Marshall. So I was like, "Oh, this is kind of a big deal." And then I was kind of nervous. And so I was like, "Okay, I'm going to be speaking to her and pitching to her after after the banquet." And so I was like, "All right, well, before the banquet, before the speaker finished, I was like, okay, I'm going to run use the ladies' room just so that I'm like totally prepared to do my pitch to this big editor." So I run off to use the ladies' room. And then as I'm coming out of the ladies' room, there's two women running into the ladies' room going, "Wait, don't go." And it's Libby Hawker and this woman I don't know. And it ended up being Danielle Marshall. They like chased me into the ladies' room because they thought I was. So I ended up like pitching all of my books outside of the ladies' room at the San Antonio Marriott. And we ended up having this great conversation. And she said to me, "Do you have an agent?" I said, "I don't have an agent." She said, "Okay, I've got 3 people for you to query. Just tell them I sent you to them, and I'm quite interested in your stuff." So one thing led to another. I ended up signing with Danielle Egan Miller of Brown and Miller in Chicago, and went back to Danielle Marshall, and boom, 2-book deal. And here I am, Mark. It's like, that's just like serendipitous, all those things
Yeah.
happening. It really is. I know you probably can agree that a lot of the stuff in this business is really luck and timing. Um,
Oh boy. Oh boy. But I mean, it's cliche, but you need to be ready. And so I look at luck and timing, but you were ready. You were ready to read that night.
yeah,
You were ready with the book projects in mind. You probably presented with lots of ideas. You had multiple projects to discuss. It
I did.
wasn't you were standing on years of work, and you were
And years
also
and years of pitching, like,
years of pitching.
yeah,
Exactly. Yeah. You
yeah.
were familiar with the conference scene. You were familiar with just how that whole grind works and just the relationship nature of this business.
Yes, it is
Yeah.
very much about, making friends, making connections, and FaceTime, like, getting in front of others and
Right.
commiserating or celebrating whatever it
Right.
is
Right.
that you're doing.
S-
Yeah.
So just to be clear, the passage you read that night, is that from one of the scenes in one of the books that's coming out from Lake Union, and- or
It
was that
is,
from another project?
it's from one of the books that was
Okay.
purchased. It's not the
Okay.
one that's forthcoming, but it's coming soon.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Well,
So,
let's get right into the new book that's coming out in
yeah.
September, The First Witch of Boston, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
so tell us all about it. I mean, I read the blurb online and it sounds gripping, and I grew up in the Boston area, so
That's
um,
right.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah. So it's instant
Yeah,
appeal.
it's basically the fictional narrative of the first woman to be executed for witchcraft in Massachusetts. And this predates the Salem witch trials by about 50 years. This was in 1648. Um, we don't have any surviving court records from the trial. We have the court summons, like the constable's report. We have that, but we don't have the actual court records. But what we do have is the personal diary of John Winthrop, who wrote very much in depth about the trial and described each charge that was brought against this woman, Margaret Jones. And he has, as John Winthrop always did, he has lots of opinions about the matter. So everything we know about it is from John Winthrop's diary, this constable report, and also it was a later mention by the minister Matthew Hale, who actually was present at the trial as a 12-year-old boy. and then was later involved in the Salem witch trials, of course. So yeah, we had this really incredible story that's basically told by John Winthrop. And so I decided, let's let's give this woman a voice. Let's give her let's give her a life. Let's give her a voice in this matter, because she has no voice as of right now, the way the historical record stands, of course.
Right.
So
Wow. So is it first person, close third person? How do you tell the story?
So oddly enough, it is the novel is in two parts. The first part is told third person from the husband's point of view. So her husband, Thomas Jones, was also brought up on witchcraft charges, but was found to be innocent and soon freed. So the first half of the book is told third person point of view from the husband's point of view. And then the second half of the novel is told in first person point of view, Margaret's point of view. So
Interesting. Very interesting.
yeah.
Yeah. Wow. And so, and just you got the Winthrop documents, other research, just looking into the time and the era, the location, things like that.
Yeah. I first came across the story of Margaret Jones as a post-grad student back in ancient times when I was a post-grad student. Um, so I did my master's degree in 17th century British and American history at Cambridge University. So I did
In
like a
England.
comparative study. Yeah, I did a comparative study of indentured servants from East Anglia who moved to Massachusetts Bay Colony between 1635 and 1700.
Wow.
So that's how I
Wow.
came across the story of Margaret Jones to begin with. And I was always like, that'd make a really good book someday. Like, I'm going to come back to that story someday. And I wrote three other books first, and then finally came back to the story. So I'm finally using my degree for something.
Yeah.
So
So
that's how
the
I came across it.
yeah, and it was 50 years before the Salem witch trials, but was it where did she live? What town did she live in?
Okay, so she lived in Charlestown,
Okay,
present day
right,
Charlestown, Massachusetts, which was a separate town from Boston at the time, separated by the Charles River.
right,
Um, Now, of course, Charlestown is a neighborhood of Boston.
right. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
right there. It's right there
right.
and very close, but back then it would have been a little bit of a trek, you know.
Yeah, you
Yeah,
had to ferry over.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
there was a ferry service.
Wow.
Or you could go all the way around. You could take, you could go by horseback through Cambridge and then up the Narrows
Yeah,
into Boston. That'd be quite a
yeah,
long, arduous journey, though.
yeah. Did you go back there to research anything in the location?
Yes. Oh, yes. And I went and looked at a lot of maps of the area, contemporary maps at the time. Did a lot of research at the Massachusetts Historical Society. Um, looked at probate records and things. Um, I am also intimately familiar with the area. I grew up in Chelsea, Massachusetts, which is just across from Charlestown via the Tobin Bridge, which apparently they're going to maybe rip down soon and replace with
Yeah.
a Good heavens. Can you imagine the junk they'll find if they do that?
No. Big old bridge. That bridge always kind of scared me. Rickety and kind of just way
Yes.
high. Yeah, yeah,
Ugly and rickety.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Also, I grew up in the shadow of that bridge. Growing up in Chelsea, you kind of grow up with a
Yeah,
relationship with the bridge.
right.
So having grown up in Chelsea, um, you know, you're I always joke, like when you grew up in Chelsea in the 80s, um, you were surrounded by a couple of things, a lot of history and also a lot of crime. Um, Fortunately, I was very interested in history from a very young age, which
Yeah,
is kind of the reason I took that path. So I had an intimate understanding with the geographical area, because
right,
there are some other characters involved in the story, um, based on real people. Um, Governor Bellingham lived in what is now Chelsea, had a hunting lodge there. He takes a pivotal role in the book. Samuel Maverick had a plantation on what is now East Boston. It was called Noddle's Island. He had a very large plantation there. So again, these are all places I'm super familiar with from growing up. I had an aunt who
yeah,
lived in East Boston. So yeah, so it was kind of
yeah,
close to home to write this
yeah,
story.
yeah. how do you build tension in the story itself when the end is kind of embedded in the premise or would probably be on the book flap copy
Yes.
about her? So, well, how do you
Yeah,
build tension?
that's a good question. And I did have a couple of people, ask me this before, like, we know she's gonna die, so why do we want to read?
Yeah.
And I was like, well, because we want to know how she lived and how she was seen by the people who were around her. I wanted to make this a real person, not, a historical blip. And the story really centers around the relationship she has with her husband and he with her. Um, and can their love and their relationship survive all the obstacles and challenges of the outer world that's basically knocking on the door? So it's more about how does love withstand uh, you know, lots of tragedy. So
Yeah. Huh. Were there any, writing about that, were there any parallels that you saw today to people being kind of misunderstood or persecuted for their
yeah.
beliefs?
While writing this novel, I had kind of like this fire in my belly, thinking about all the injustices that are, suddenly occurring before our eyes today. Um, I started really getting in depth into this novel right after Roe v. Wade was repealed, and um, oddly enough, when Roe v. Wade was repealed, I was in the UK at the time. I was at the Glastonbury Festival the day that it was repealed, and the news just spread like wildfire through the festival. And people, people who were not American were just appalled. And then the Americans that were there were just, felt
Yeah,
shamed. It was a shameful thing, and it made me angry, made me very angry to have to feel ashamed of my country. This shouldn't be happening. This is a country built on, freedom and democracy, and we're having our rights
right.
taken away. So yeah, there was definitely a fire in my belly when I was writing the story, for the injustice of, of women who timelessly have been accused of, this, that, and the other thing. And yeah, so.
Yeah. Um, well, let's talk about Lake Union and because I had a novel published there as well and familiar with their process. And this is something I've been thinking about. I've been writing a little bit about it on the RMFW blog about the advantages of traditional publishing. And
Mhm.
clearly, at some point over the last X number of years, you could have said, "Hey, I'm just going to go independent publish and
Yeah.
go that route." Did you ever really seriously look into that or consider it?
So I certainly considered it pretty seriously, um, right before I got my agent, the first go round, back in
Yeah,
2008. And that was kind of like the wild west of
yeah,
self-publishing, indie publishing, right? It was when
right.
everything was new and exciting. Um, at the time, I was very involved in a local critique group. It was the Southwest Denver Critique Group, um, which, I cannot thank enough for, how much that critique group helped shape me and, make me the writer that I am today.
Pretty
Um,
legendary bunch too. They're really strong.
yeah,
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 it very super dynamic group of completely different individuals all brought
yeah,
together for one purpose.
yeah.
I mean, you couldn't ask for a
Right.
better dynamic mix. Um, so there were some people, some close friends of mine in the group who had decided to try self-publishing. They were like, you know what, screw this game, because it is a game in many ways. And it's a frustrating game. And they were like, I'm gonna try my luck at this. This is a whole new world. So I did watch a couple of very close writer friends take the plunge into self-publishing. Um, and my observation was that in a couple of instances, it 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 seemed to take the I don't know how to put this. It took the passion away from them.
Mhm.
Um, I don't think it went as well planned as they may have hoped for. Um, and it was sad to me to see people who I really respected and admired and loved their work, prolific writers, kind of be beaten down by the process. And so it kind of it started to not look so idealistic to
Yeah.
me. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. And I think from my perspective, it's just so interesting. The people that do well in independent publishing, there's just a certain characteristic to their nature in terms of promotion when it comes time to just getting out there and promoting. And they're just a natural at it. And they're going to be relentless about it. They're going to be endless about it. Not shameless doesn't matter because we're all shameless when it comes to
Yeah, we are.
promoting.
So true. Yes.
But they just it's a natural fit that they can just get out there and naturally hustle in a great way. And
Yeah.
RMFW is full of really talented writers who do really, really well
Yes.
publishing their own books. But there are others, and I agree with you, who finally get their books in, excuse me, print. Got to take a sip of water.
Oh, no worries.
Who finally see their books in print and um, they don't know what to do with it at that point. There's just a like now that I've caught the dog has caught the car. What am I going to do with it? I mean, you
Yeah.
finally caught it and you have something, but you really didn't have a plan for how to get it out into the world. Um,
Right. Because I think
yeah,
as writers, we tend to be very not introvert. I mean, yeah, some of us are introverted, but
right.
it's a very, inner world process, and we're not used to putting ourselves out there in the universe. Like you really need to. I admire yes, I also know some, self-published authors who have had quite a bit of success. Um, this is since, back in the 2000s, the aughts. And like you said, they have a certain dynamic personality. Also, they seem to have, just endless energy. And I wonder if these
Yeah,
people ever sleep. I wish I
yeah,
had that.
right,
Yeah. So
right,
it's admirable. I just know about myself. I'm not capable of that.
right,
I know that about myself. Yeah.
right. One thing I've been sort of arguing for on the blog, and I had a whole series about just making sure you don't think it, I mean, yes, it is a game. I agree with that. You completely on the traditional publishing side. It's a game, but it is a game that you can play and you can play hard. And you can dedicate yourself to that and you can decide even if it takes a decade, I'm going to really give it everything I've got. And the benefits at the end are kind of hard to describe in some ways, but I will just say my book, The Fireballer, with Lake Union, and having gone through the same process with their sister company, Thomas and Mercer, for my new thriller. I mean, I can't even begin to describe the amount of help that the editors provided and the insight, the in-depth insight, the copy editing, the fastidious copy editing on top of great
Yes.
ideas. And that came from the two editors they hired. Well, actually, it was three different editors they hired, plus my editor, who had great ideas at the outset just to say, here's a different way to shape the novel. And then on
Yes.
top of that, my agent also chiming in. So,
Mhm.
if you're open to all those suggestions, the end result is bound to be a better book.
Yes. And I think what you just said, if you're open to these suggestions,
Yeah,
that's key.
yeah,
Um, and I was at having been at it for so long, I was so excited to have people throw their ideas my way and just kind of take it all in. It was an exciting process for me. Um, Oddly enough, in the process of this book happening, my acquiring editor was changed 3 times. which I know, and I'm learning now from lots of people in the book world, this is a pretty common occurrence in the
Yep.
publishing world. A lot of moving around and switching around. Um, but what was cool for me was that it was kind of advantageous because I got three different perspectives. You
Yeah.
know,
Yep.
never mind my developmental editors' perspectives and and the copywriters, the copy editors. Um, so I got all of this great input coming in from all these different sources, and it just helped, I think, to make it a stronger product at the end. It
Yep.
was a great process. It was funny because you hear people who, when they finally get published, they're like, oh, it can be a grueling process, the editorial process. And you hear all these stories and you're like, oh gosh, this is going to be terrible. I mean, I was like, I couldn't have enjoyed it more. So I was like, I am
Yep.
clearly doing what I'm meant to be doing because this has
Yes.
been a great, enjoyable process. Yeah.
100% agree with that.
Yeah.
And again, if it's improving something, and you can see it, if you can separate your own self from it and just say that is a better way to approach the scene, that's a better, use of words in a certain situation, whatever it might be. I mean, I think the editorial letter for the Fireballer was something like 16 pages, single spaced, just full of ideas and
Wow.
it was great. It was
Yeah.
great. Yeah, I loved it. I absolutely loved it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, tell us about the second book. And I assume, I assume I shouldn't assume, are they connected?
They are not connected.
Okay.
They have nothing to do with each other.
Okay.
Um, the second novel is it's at this stage in the game still titleless.
Uh-huh.
But it is set in 1880 New York City and moves to Leadville, Colorado during the silver boom. And it's a very intense love triangle that goes from boom to bust or vice versa, depending on how you look at it. Um, so yeah, I'm pretty excited about it. It's a bit of a darker novel than this one, believe it or not, which is about a woman being
Yeah.
executed
Yeah.
for crap. It's quite dark, this next book. Um, Bit gothy.
Yeah.
But I'm super excited about it.
And is that the new one after the first Witch of Boston, the second book in your two-book deal? Is that one of the projects that you were working on prior to getting this whole thing rolling, or is this a brand new
This
thing that you've been?
this is a book that I wrote 10 years ago when I fell out with my first agent.
Wow.
Uh, so it's getting like a second chance, like second
Yeah.
life in a big way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That must feel great.
I think also because the book has some major LGBTQ themes in it. And I think that 12 years ago, it was a different market in the publishing world than it is today.
Yep.
And I'm glad of that. I mean, we've become much more open and accepting of all different points of view and whatnot. I'm thankful that that is changing. So it's for everybody's good. So
Yes, indeed. Wow.
yeah,
Fantastic. Wow. It must feel great.
it's kind of like my husband's like, it's finally coming around, is what he always says. Um, my husband, who has also had the patience of a saint throughout this process and has been constantly supportive of me, and always finding the glass half full in things. Um, uh, you know, very fortunate to have
Yep.
him as my partner through this. Yeah.
So the first Witch of Boston comes out in September.
Yes,
Are
September
are we going
1st.
starting to get a rough idea of doing some events or launch plans or anything like that?
So they're still in the works, but there will be a launch event. I'm in Houston, Texas. There will be a launch event here. Um, there will be a couple of events in Massachusetts in October. Very timely. One
Yeah,
in
yeah,
Salem, Massachusetts. So perfect time of year, October,
yeah.
Salem, witches.
I can
Yeah,
smell the air. I can smell the air. Yeah,
yes, the
yeah,
leaves and all this
yeah,
and pumpkin spice.
yeah, yeah. That's
Dunkin'
great.
Donuts pumpkin spice, of course.
Yeah,
Right.
right. Dunkin' Donuts for sure. Yep.
Yes.
And then do we have a publication date for the second book? Is that planned yet?
It is tentatively August of 26.
Okay, great.
Um,
Wow,
yes.
excellent.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, I just kind of wrapping up here before I ask you for your book recommendation or writer recommendation. Is there a way for you to kind of just capture your story in terms of a few tips for writers today that are starting out? And I mean, I've been, just thinking about the whole idea of it's a long game. It's a,
It
you
is the
know,
long
you
game.
you can get lucky early on, but it's a long game, and that's okay.
Yeah, it's a lot like a Red Sox Yankees game, you know, and things can really they can go extra innings and things can change at the drop of a hat. It really can. It's the nature of the business. It's the nature of all of the art world business, right? No matter whether you're a musician or, an actor, um, it's just the nature of it. It's a very subjective business. So I think my number one advice would be always stay open-minded. You have to stay open-minded and take in the feedback, take in the criticism. It's the only way that you'll hone your craft. Um, Man, I used to get so beat up at some of our critique group meetings, and sometimes I'd come home just like pissed off. I would just be like, it's so and so said, I was like, so I'd be livid, but then I would, mull over what they said and always try to keep an open mind. And then I'd come around and be like, you know what? She's right. There was no tension in that scene. She's absolutely
Yeah,
right. I'm glad she kicked my ass and told me that, and so it's always staying open-minded to feedback, to criticism, suggestions. Um, and also you got to keep the passion for it.
yeah,
If you lose the passion, it's not gonna work.
yep, yep. Great
Yeah.
stuff. Well, we always like to wrap it up with a book recommendation or just a writer recommendation, just to pay it forward a little bit. Got something for us?
Yeah. I do. So a good friend of mine, also Rocky Mountain fiction writer member, um, Amy Runyon, her latest just came out and it's a contemporary called The Wandering Season. And I love this book. Um, it's funny, it's clever, and it's romantic, and it's very escapist as well. So that's something that I've read recently from, one of our fellow members that I have really enjoyed. Another book, I don't know if I have it behind me. Oh, shoot. Well, anyway, it's Nancy Bilio, who writes historical suspense. Her last name is spelled Bilyeau, Bilio, Nancy Bilio, and her latest is called The Versailles Code. And I couldn't put this book down. I just finished it like 3 days ago. Again, historical suspense set in mid 18th century London and Paris. I mean, it's totally my jam. I love all things 17th and 18th century,
Mm.
but the characters are amazing, and it just kept me turning the pages. The suspense was just, it was palpable. It was great
That
stuff.
sounds that sounds
So if you're
great.
looking for like a fun historical thriller, I can't recommend that book enough, The Versailles Code. So
Fantastic. Well,
yeah.
congratulations to you, Andrea, and good luck with the launch of the First Witch of Boston and right on down the road. And um, wow, so happy for you.
Thank you, Mark. Appreciate it. And thanks for always being supportive over the years. That's what makes Rocky Mountain Fiction Writers so great. It's such a wonderful community. And I tell people that all the time. Um, I'm so thankful to have been a part of that community for so many years. So
Amen.
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.